Today we're in the shop with the Project Gladiator diesel, and we're going to replace these big bulky taillights with something a little more sleek that won't hang out so much. Now these are the factory LEDs, and we will be selling those, and these are also LEDs, so we're not sure why there's a resistor there, but we're going to plug all this stuff up and see if it works. The only tools you're really going to need are going to be an 8mm nut driver and a Phillips head screwdriver. So to get the tail light off, we've got two 8mm bolts or screws here on the side. You access those by taking and folding down the tailgate, getting on the inside of there, and then you'll pull this out just a little bit, and then you'll knock it to the rear with the palm of your hand there, and then reach up in here. There's a red lock, and you'll push that retainer, and that tail light is now off the vehicle. So we're going to flip it over, and we've got on the new one 6 Phillips head screwdriver or Phillips head screws that we need to take out, and that's to remove our I don't know if that blind spot monitoring or lane change assist, whatever that stuff is there to detect a car at the back corner. A lot of vehicles don't have that, but this one does, and that can be transferred over to the new one. All right, now that we have those 6 screws out, this sensor is just kind of snapped into the bracket there, so you just pry that open just a little bit, and then it comes out. And then we've got another connector on there that we'll have to disengage, and it's the same as the tail light connector. It will, the red locking tab will slide out, and then you'll just pinch the connector down, and then it unclips from the connector there. So we're going to transfer that over now to the new tail light, and we've got to take this square bracket off of that tail light so that we can swap that over. We'll do that now. Okay, now that we have the sensor swapped over to the new bracket, you can't really mess that up. There's an opening in that bracket, and that bracket only fits on that one way, so you can't really mess that up. So now that we've got that on, we have this resistor, and they give you some red double-sided foam tape here. So we're going to apply that to the back side of this resistor, and then the resistor actually has a connector on it, so if we decide that something is not right or the setting isn't right, and I would recommend getting a taser for this install, because you can change the settings of your tail lights, headlights, fog lights, etc. But we've already put one of those on this truck, so we've got all kinds of modified settings that we can have and change. So we're going to just take this resistor, and we're going to stick it to the inside of the body. We've already cleaned this area off in here, so we're just going to use that double-sided tape there and attach that right inside the body there, and just give it a firm press there and hold it for a few seconds. And then once that's done, we can take our other connector, the main connector, and plug it in up here, and then lock that little red assurance tab. And we're going to tuck all of this wiring in here. My recommendation is to try to keep the wiring away from this resistor as best as possible, because that little guy will get hot. And then these just line up in the original holes and push in. And then on the inside here, we can reuse the factory bolts All right, now that is fully installed, and we can take our little protective film off of there, and then we can check the operation of this. Next on the Gladiator project is this rear bumper. We've already actually sold the factory Rubicon bumper and swapped this sport bumper on, but we're going to take this bumper off, and we've got a MetalCloak bumper with some D-ring adapters that will come out instead of the tow hooks. So let's get this old bumper off and see how it goes. All right, we got the old bumper off. That was 16 millimeter here and here, as well as over here, and then also here. We had already had the wiring harness off the back, which ours has backup sensors on it. And then we had a 221s holding that factory tow hook on. And if you have a Rubicon, they're also over here. So our first step is going to be putting the new tow hooks on. And they simply go into the same spot that the old ones did, but the new bolt size is a 22 millimeter. So we're going to get those put on here. So a lot of new stuff here is using soft shackles for your recovery points, and I noticed this MetalCloak eyelet doesn't have a real smooth radius. It's kind of got a little bit of an edge on it. So you probably will not want to run a soft shackle directly onto these recovery points. You'll want to use a bow shackle instead. But we've got these 22 millimeter bolts on there. You can't really mess them up, but we're gonna run those down and then just torque them really good. All right, and then we'll move over here to the other side. Okay, our new rear bumper does not reuse these two clips, so we're gonna take a little screwdriver in here to release those tabs. That way we can seal the rear bumper with all the hardware. And then another thing to note, when I sold the Rubicon bumper off here and we put the plastic bumper on instead, I gave the guy my hitch because it had nut certs in the bottom of the hitch with T50 Torx bolts, which this one no longer has. So the MetalCloak instructions are wanting us to go ahead and put those two bolts back in because their bolts or their bumper mounts to those bolts, and I do not have those. So what we're going to do is we're going to drill out these two holes and put some 1/2-inch nut certs in the bottom of the hitch. That way we have all of the mounting hardware that's supposed to be there. However, those two bottom bolts will no longer be the T50. They're going to be a 1/2-inch bolt. And since all of their hardware is like zinc plated gold, we'll just get some that match, that will look good with it. Okay, since we have to put a nut cert in the bottom of that receiver tube, I've got those 1/2-inch nut certs that have a grip range equal to the thickness of that metal, and we have to make a tool here. So we've got a 1/2-inch 13 bolt and washer, and then we've drilled out the center of a nut that will slide over top of that, and then this will screw down there. And once we drive that up in the hole that we drill, we will hold the big nut with a wrench and then tighten this bolt with an impact gun. So I'm going to drill out the receiver tube now, and then we'll show you how that procedure works to install those. So we don't have a drill bit that is in between 5/8 and 11/16. So we're going to go almost all the way through with that 11/16. That way we can drive it in that last little bit so it'll hold good. feel when that thing is cinched down, because you'll feel the resistance on your impact gun. And now that we've got that nutsert installed, it's basically pinched down inside that tube, and then we can use 1/2" 13 hardware for the bottom. So we're going to do that on the other side to match. That way we can get this bumper base put on. All right, now that we have the nutserts installed and the toe mounts in, we're going to slide the bumper base on. And check and see if these holes line up under here. And those lower holes are just big enough for 1/2" hardware to fit in. So it looks like we won't have to do any modification there. Okay, now we're going to install the end caps, and these simply slide over the side of the bumper, and we are going to stick the gold bolts in there with the flanged nut on the back side. So that end cap is actually going over the center part of the bumper, as well as the original bracket on the frame. So we've got that started, and then the one on the bottom is going to be the countersunk bolt with that skid washer. So that's going to go in down here. So the hardware for the top side here, where the tailgate folds down, is going to be this carriage bolt and nut, and you'll be able to slide it. Actually, I think, yeah, it'll go in the top up here. There we go. And then the nut will fit on the bottom side. So now we've got all 4 bolts loosely installed, and that has some flexibility in terms of the other parts. We're going to, these 2 right here, leave off for now, because we have the corner protection piece that goes up under the back side of the bed, and that will also use these holes here to attach. All right, one option to this bumper is this piece right here that goes up under the back here and ties in the back of the bumper to the skid plate here, and has a frame brace that goes up and attaches to 3 points, 2 on the frame and 1 on the hitch. So our next step is going to be installing that, and that little guy just goes up in here and kind of keys into place, and then it's going to be held into place in the rear bumper in several spots. First one is going to be up there on the rear. All right, so now it's held in place, and then we've got a few fasteners that are going to go on up there under the frame. Some vehicles have one of these already on them. If you've got a Rubicon, sometimes you'll have that steel rear bumper, which I think maybe all Rubicons have the steel rear bumper. All right, so now we have all those bolts started, and the rear bolt is another one of these. It's going to be the flanged bolt there. It's not quite lined up there. We'll help it by threading it in there. There we go. Okay, that last bolt we're talking about goes through this one right here. And on Rubicon models, this hitch has a sleeve right here and a bolt that goes through there to the other side. Now, this one we've already swapped out the hitch and sold that hitch and bumper. We didn't realize that we needed that piece. So what we're going to do is make a sleeve for this bumper out of some tubing, and then we are going to run a 1/2-inch bolt through there, which is a little bit bigger than the 12mm. So we're going to go ahead and fab up one of those. That way we can get this bumper all bolted in and start doing the wiring. All right, so we found some DOM tubing that we just cut out to use as spacers for that area, and those measure 2 5/8 in width, and they're just going to go up there in the frame, and then that bolt will go through the outside of the hitch, through the tube, through the inside of the hitch, and then we'll have a nut on the back side there. All right, so on the trailer connector, that thing just has a couple of tabs here that you'll pinch to release that from the old bumper, and then that simply goes in here and should snap in place. Let me see here. There we go. That thing fits really snug, but it looks upside down to me. Yeah, it's actually, I don't know why they do that. They mount it upside down to where now all of the symbols are opposite of what you would read. So I guess you can just figure that out if you have a problem. But it fits nice and tight, so that's good. We went ahead and installed one of these license plate lights, and I will say this, that is totally different from what their pictures show on their instructions. The one they show on their instructions has a light that goes across the top here, but this one's going to have 2 separate ones, and the hardware you're going to use for that is that little tapered head Phillips. So we'll feed the wires through this center hole here, and then stick the Phillips head screw in the hole, and then it's got a little nut on the back side, which is going to be a 5/16. So we'll get both of these running here. And like I said, we've already done one side. And what we'll do is after we get these snugged up, we will show you on the back side how to wire these up. Again, front side's Phillips head, and the rear is a 5/16. Our license plate is held on with the 1/4-inch stainless button head bolt with a 7/16 wrench that you'll put on the back side for the nut. All right, so ours is equipped with backup sensors. This one has the holes for it, so whether you have them or not, it's the same bumper. If you don't have these, there's simply a plug that goes into that hole. Now, I don't recall which end is up, but I'm going to assume that the connector faces down, and we'll give this a shot. But there's a cutout in the top of this. You can see there's a little square notch, and that needs to be facing the top. So we'll put that in there, and there's just a pretty good interference fit there. And then from the back side, we'll push the sensor in there. And it just simply snaps into place and fits really nice and clean. Okay, on the back side here, we've got our factory connector and then the black and white wire from the new license plate light. And what we're going to do, since we don't need this connector anymore, we're going to cut this off and then strip back the wiring. That way we can test which one of these is positive and negative. Since it's an LED, it will be polarity sensitive. Okay, so as you saw there, we, instead of using the connectors they supplied, we went ahead and soldered those terminals together, hoping we don't ever have to take the bumper off. But if we do, what we can simply do is unplug the connector over here and bring the wiring off with the bumper. So we're going to do that just to make sure we don't get any water intrusion or any problems down the road. So now what we need to do is basically just tidy up all of this wiring. So we're going to take some zip ties and fasten all that into place. And just to note, on those wires there, black goes to white with the blue stripe, and white goes to black on the chassis of the truck. So it's just opposite of what you would think they need to be. So that is done, and we are just going to tidy up the wiring and get these sleeves put in the frame plates, and we will be finished up with the rear bumper install. Okay, we've got the rear side of the bumper tidied up. All of the wiring is intact. The only thing we're missing is our sleeve that goes right here and the long bolt. We've got those sleeves cut and painted, but we did not have a bolt long enough, so we're gonna have to get one of those at the hardware store this week. And what that'll do is run through here, through the sleeve, and to the other side with a nut on the back side. And then if you'll remember right here, our hitch, since this is a non-Rubicon hitch, did not have these bolt nutserts in the tube, so we put a 1/2 inch 13 nutsert in the tube. And then you can see the bottom side here where those bolt protectors are, and then there's the hardware of the back side of the bumper with the backup sensors included. And then of course this one, we've got an aftermarket tailpipe for the diesel here, and we've got the bolts that attach the support bracket for that corner brace kit. And then let's get a nice view of the outside of this bumper. So this is pretty solid right here. It's going to protect the lower part of the bed. This is not a huge rock crawling machine, so we wanted a full-size bumper for this rig. And then we've got backup sensors and everything attached. And overall, it looks really slick, and we are anxious to do more for this truck. But check us out, like, subscribe, comment, and let us know if you think we did something wrong or what you think about this rear bumper. All right, we got some bolts, actually found some here at the shop. John found these for us digging around in our bolt bin. But we've got these sleeves cut out of DOM and have those painted. And then we have this 1/2 inch bolt through that bottom bumper support bracket going into the inside with a lock nut and washer. So the bumper is now complete, and we are ready to move on to our next mod.